Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'll catch you up on things. We took the car out recently to test it and it was overheating, and I diagnosed it to the fans weren't engaging. So there's some issue communicating between the car's computer and the fans, and they're not turning on. So it's kind of become a non-issue because I wanted to run the fans to a switch anyways, so I could control when they come on. I think stock the fans end up turning on around somewhere around 200 degrees, roughly around that area. But that's when the car is actually starting to get hot and potentially overheat, because you don't want it to get much hotter than that. You know, 220, 240, I mean, you're overheating the car. So you want to be able to have your fans on a switch so you can run them constantly to keep that temperature down. So what I did was built a relay switch panel and installed it into the 350, and I installed 8 of them. I don't think I'll need 8 of them, but we have 7 switches hooked up in the car, so if we need to throw anything on a switch with a relay, because it's got high amperage, like a fan or a fuel pump or something like that, we have the ability to do so now. So I'll show you kind of how I built it and what it looks like and how it's in the car. And here's what we've got. So we got the power wire, comes off the main battery terminal, and it runs to a 50 amp breaker. And I used a breaker because with a breaker it just trips and you can reset it. No replacing fuses or any of that kind of shit. It's really nice. It's 50 amps. Currently I'm only running the fans off of it, and then I was thinking about potentially running lights. I'm not really sure what are the things I would want to run on it at the moment, but the fans I believe only pull about 20 amps, and then the lights would probably draw anywhere from 2 to 5, maybe to 10 amps. So I won't meet the 50 amp threshold. If I do put other things on it, though, depending on what the amp draw is of that, I might need to upgrade this breaker to a higher amperage draw, so that way it won't trip all the time if I run everything at the exact same time. So currently we're within the threshold, so that's fine. The power wire comes off of the breaker, and I have it running. There's a grommet here, straight down. It comes through the firewall. Underneath the passenger floorboard, comes across and drops behind here. Here's my switches here. So these are all hooked up. Underneath this, the wiring runs down above the trans terminal. You can actually see it right in there. So it runs down through trans tunnel. And where we have the relay panel is actually back here behind the passenger seat, sitting on top of the fuel pump. So what's really cool is this tray sits in here and it floats. It floats above the fuel pump by a couple inches. So what I did is I just mounted everything to this tray. So the reason that you would need relays is in the event that you're trying to power something from a switch, but the switch doesn't have the ability to handle the capacity of what you're trying to power. So the example of this is the radiator fans. The radiator fans draw around 20 amps of power. These switches are only regulated at around 15 amps. So if you put more than 15 amps into these switches, they're going to catch on fire and blow up. They're pretty much going to melt. So when that happens, you'll burn your car to the ground. So you don't want to do that. So what you have to do in that instance is you have to get something like a relay. So these relays over here can handle up to 40 amps each individually. You want to have the switches control the relay, and then the relay control the accessory, as opposed to the switch controlling the accessory. How does that work? You want to take 12 volts from an accessory wire in your car, and I took the 12 volt accessory wire from where the previous gauges, the stock gauges from the car were, and I wired it to the switches, and that gives all my switches power. You ground and power your switches just like normal, but then the signal wire, so when you toggle this, what triggers the 12 volts to travel to what would be your accessory now travels to your relay. And the way that travels down is on the back of that switch, it sends power down these white wires and they come into these relays. What the relay then does is it's got power already, so the relay is powered, so it has the ability to accept the signal, and then the switch provides 12 volt power, which then makes the relay switch open to allow the power to pass through. The power then passes through to a distribution block. Once it hits this distribution block and the power continues to the cable, it comes out of the distribution block to your accessory. So when the accessory is drawing 20 amps of power, it's drawing 20 amps back from your relay that is getting power from your battery directly. So you're bypassing the switch. So it's not drawing power through the switch. The switch is just telling the relay to open and allow the voltage and amperage to then pass through itself. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, there's a lot of good YouTube videos out there already that explain how a relay works, but that's essentially how it works. So each one of your relays needs a ground. So off of the grounds, I've run them to these grounding posts. So what I did is I took some hardware, drilled a hole through here and ran a post up. And I did two because I like to keep things uniform. So this grounding post is for every relay on this side. This grounding post is for each relay on that side. Then what I do is I daisy chain the two posts together and Y cable them on the bottom. So on the underside of this, when you go to lift this up, because this is the cool thing. So if you ever need to service this, you could disconnect the main power, pull this guy right out. Underneath here, you can see, so this is where all my switch wire runs through. And then on the bottom side, you can see where the two cables come and connect into a wire connector. And that's my ground for everything on this panel. And what I did is I ran it through the bottom of the car. And then you can kind of see there's a grommet hole on the back. And on the back side here, we just came up, we make sure you sand down all the paint when you ground something, get a nice metal connection. We put a connector right there, boom. So this ground cable is grounding everything on my relay panel. Just runs right back through, come up through the hole. And I put everything on these connectors because if I need to pull this out or service it for any reason, boom, quick release the connector, boom, quick release the connector, the whole thing comes out, and then I can just service the whole tray however I want to. So what I then did is just drilled out a hole through here because there's no real good way to get wire through here. And all my wires just come through my center console above my trans tunnel. And that's pretty much how I have all my switches wired up. And anything that I want to wire to that, I could just come over here, I run a wire, just plug it in one of these, and good to go. So let's say I want to hook up some LEDs. I just run LEDs to one of these, I figure out which relay it's on, and then in coordinates I have them all labeled. So let's just say I run it to relay 3, come over here. All right, now that the wires are ran to relay 3, switch 3 is relay 3, boom. That'll provide power to that. And it's protected. It's protected multiple ways. It's protected from a relay that can handle the amperage of anything I put through it. It is protected from a fuse that if the wire starts to get too hot or melt down or has an issue, the fuse will blow. And if that doesn't stop it before then, the wire that runs and provides power to that entire distribution block is protected by a breaker up at the front of the car. So you're protected multiple ways. Your car won't burn down to the ground, and then you could hook up a lot of the accessories that you want to put on your car. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this video. It was a shorter one, just kind of showing you how I built the relay panel, a little bit of how it works and where I mounted it. I had a handful of people asking me if I could make a video about it so they could see exactly how I integrated into the 350. So hopefully that helped a lot of you guys that were curious about that or were wondering how exactly it works, how it functions, why you would need to do it, why you don't want to run high amperage fans to a switch, and why you want to run it through a relay system like that, and how exactly all that kind of works, runs through the car. As always, like, comment, subscribe if you like the content. We're going to be pumping a bunch more out on this car build. Hopefully you guys like the content, and I'll see you in the next video.